Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Konrad Witaszczyk. I'm a PhD student and a research associate at the University of Cambridge. And my talk will be mostly about the top level, I think, in the stack that Robert showed, which is third-party software. As you've seen, we have a lot of different layers of the stack already adapted to Cherry. But there's a lot of work, in particular, around third-party software adaptations to Cherry, and more specifically for Cherry BSD, as Cherry BSD is the main mature operating system today. We have around 10,000 third-party software packages adapted to Cherry, which means that they make use of the Cherry protection model, but also around 25,000 packages that don't use capabilities at all, but provide functionalities that are currently missing in the Cherry-enabled packages. Cherry BSD itself provides support for 3 ABIs. First of all, we have the hybrid ABI that allows you to run unmodified, completely vanilla IH64 software on Morello, but you can introduce capabilities in selected places if you wish. You can compile both user space and kernel code for the hybrid mode. In the kernel's case, it supports both Cherry ABI and hybrid ABI programs. The Cherry ABI allows programs to use capabilities, or requires programs to use capabilities everywhere to access memory. Again, you can compile kernel also for the pure cap mode. In this case, both kernel and user space benefit from spatial and referential memory safety. But additionally, as Robert mentioned, in the user space, we have support for temporal safety since 2311. And lastly, we provide support for the benchmark ABI. That in this mode, user programs behave almost the same as Cherry ABI programs, except for some workarounds to microarchitectural limitations of the Morello platform that Jessica Clark will talk about more in detail. But in particular, in this case, the program capability counter is unbounded, and all branching instructions use integer registers instead of capability ones. What you should remember is that we have a lot of software supported for Cherry ABI, but we probably just tested a fraction of the code that we managed to compile for Cherry ABI, which means that there are lots of bugs in that software. It's perfectly fine to use it daily, but in case you find some functionality missing or some software is broken, you have the hybrid ABI that is more stable and probably tested with lots of people using just FreeBSD. If you want to do any security evaluation, you have to use Cherry ABI because that's the ABI that actually makes use of Cherry capabilities. And you shouldn't use the benchmark API to do such security evaluation because, as I mentioned, there are some places where capabilities are not used, which introduces some security gaps. However, if you want to evaluate performance, the benchmark API is the only API to consider. And the hybrid API can be used as a baseline for such performance evaluation. Before Morello hardware was available, or today for Cherry RISC-V, the Cherry API Python utility was the main utility to use to port software to Cherry extended CPUs. If you don't know Cherry build, it's a Python script that allows you, using these 2 simple commands, fetch, compile, install, and run a QEMU VM with Cherry BSD for either Cherry RISC-V or Morello. Also, there's been a lot of software ported using Cherry build before Morello hardware, and you can list that software just by listing targets and grabbing for PureCap. Using this approach, actually capability is limited. Took an open source GUI stack consisting of X11, Qt, KD, and they managed to compile 6 million lines of code in, I think, less than 6 months. They had to modify under 0.03% of lines of code in that stack. And they discovered that over 70% of vulnerabilities that had been disclosed before would be mitigated if that code was compiled for Cherry API at the time they were disclosed. Before we proceed further with the slides, I'd like to introduce some terminology so that you understand it better. QEMU itself can operate in two modes. In the system mode, it emulates fully a platform with peripherals, but you can also run it in the user mode, in which case you emulate a CPU, and each time an emulated process makes a system call, QEMU translates that syscall from the emulated ABI to a native user space ABI, executes the syscall interacting with the native kernel, and then translates the result back to the emulated process. In the FreeBSD project, the FreeBSD parts is a collection of around 34,000 third-party software adaptations to FreeBSD, and the FreeBSD project makes use of these ports to compile packages for end users. Also, the FreeBSD project maintains a tool called Pooger that basically takes that ports collection and can compile packages for end users. So when we were getting ready for the Morello SoC release, it was obvious to us if we took that 32,000 third-party software ports, it would take forever to compile it under QEMU system mode. So instead, what we did, we implemented the Cherry ABI user mode in QEMU and built those ports for Cherry ABI on a FreeBSD host on AMD64 with emulation. As I mentioned before, in the hybrid ABI's case, you can run unmodified programs for vanilla AR64. So at the time, we could just compile it using a FreeBSD host running on ARM64. So what we did later, we took the FreeBSD ports collection, forked it, and called it obviously CherryBSD ports. Today, it includes various patches that are specific to Cherry and CherryBSD. It was necessary to port package, PowerArticle, SQLite, libFFI to build any reasonable number of ports. And today, we make use of that ports collection to build packages for end users. Most of the changes actually were upstreamed by various people. And today, within those 10,000 Cherry packages, there are only around 35 ports that include assembly C, C++ patches. They are relatively small. They touch only around 250 files and modify around 5,000 lines of code. And we still want to upstream them. We just haven't had resources to do so yet. We built 4 package repos, one for each ABI, and additionally another one for Cherry ABI without optimizations and with debug symbols so that people can debug software if it crashes. And you can install those packages using a package manager specific to an ABI. These package managers or third-party software for different ABIs live in completely separate boards, which is an issue because a Cherry ABI package cannot depend on hybrid ABI package, for example. But it's not something supported by FreeBSD itself, and we decided to make a shortcut and at the moment use this approach. So you have package 64C for Cherry ABI programs, package 64CB for the benchmark ABI, and package 64 for the hybrid ABI. We also have some meta packages, for example, Cherry-Desktop, that depends on everything that is required to run the GUI stack. So for example, using this simple line, package 64C, install Cherry-Desktop, you can install the full GUI environment compiled for PureCap that consists of Mesa, Wayland, KD, etc. The whole build process of those 4 package repos takes at most 102 hours. We have 2 hosts to build packages, one ARM64 with 80 cores and one AMD64 with 32 cores. The ARM64 runs actually CherryBSD compiled for vanilla AR64, and the FreeBSD one and the AMD64 runs FreeBSD. Both can benefit from the user mode. We managed to fix the user mode for both AMD64 and ARM64. And if you'd like to have a look at why some software is missing for Cherry ABI because it couldn't be built, we have build logs at pooder.cherrybsd.org. Apart from our internal efforts in the research group, the DSBD initiative runs the Technology Access Program, only for UK-based companies to experiment with Cherry and Morello. So far, we have collaborated with around 35 companies that have been porting and prototyping software on Morello boards. several of these companies actually discovered that using Morello, they found vulnerabilities in their code, and they decided to use a Morello board in the CI system to look for regressions as they develop code. As Digital Catapult, a company that actually runs the TAP program reports, those companies managed to compile around 15 million lines of code. They regularly meet and come from different sectors. So, for example, we had Real VNC that ported VNC clients and servers to Morello for Cherry ABI. We had a company that ported a CAN-based vehicle immobilizer based on libUSB from Cherry BSD. We had a company that ported a 5G-enabled base station for Cherry ABI, and also a company that ported SPDK and DPDK to run a user space storage stack. They compiled it for Cherry ABI, but also compartmentalized it using library-based compartmentalization model that Peng will talk about later. Today, we have an open call for TAP Cohort 5. If you're interested in experimenting with Morello and receive some grant, you can apply for it until the 1st of April, but also let others know if they would be interested in participating in such an effort. Just go to dsb.tech, and there is a form to apply for this program. But you don't have to participate in TAP. You can apply to get a Morello board if you work for a UK or international business or organization. There is another form that you can use to ask DSBD to send you a board. We also run a community, a Slack workspace. There are around 500 people, or probably accounts, interested in Cherry, and people there regularly discuss their progress on various Cherry-related projects. That's all. If you'd like to contact me, please just send me an email or just talk to me during this event. Thanks.
We have time for quick questions with quick answers. But not no questions. We don't have time for no questions.
How about you describe the build infrastructure for all of this. Are you moving any of it onto Morello boards?
Sorry?
Is the build structure still entirely happening under QEMU rather than on Morello boards?
It's using just QEMU user mode for scalability reasons. We try to build parts on a Morello board, but it's a great board, but it's a 4-core CPU, so it's not very feasible. Better to do that. You can use a Morello board to build that software, but we decided not to because it would take too long for us.
Thanks.
Hello, thanks Konrad, very interesting. After all your work on the different ABIs for Cherry BSD, are you able to keep track and see who's using which ABI and which ones are more popular? I mean, say the benchmark ABI, is that something that suddenly spiked in usage, and can you track that?
That's a good question. We do have Nginx logs that we can parse and extract that information, who or how many packages were downloaded by someone. We haven't looked at them yet, but we can certainly do so. So I don't know the answer to that, but we can find the answer to that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.